It's been out a couple of weeks now. Let's review the apocalypse. Hey, movie fans, welcome to another edition of Rick's Flicks Reviews. Today we're reviewing X-Men Apocalypse, directed by Bryan Singer, who, as many of you know, and if you don't know, then come on, man, do your homework. It's directed by Bryan Singer, who directed the original X-Men movie way back when, like 12 years ago or something like that. Dang, time does fly. I had a chance to watch it just a few days ago, and I wanted to wait a little bit. Usually, I watch these movies at least twice to get everything done right, but for some reason, I'm just going to have the one viewing of this one. So if I leave anything out, make sure to comment below what I missed, and then we can discuss more on the forums. Um, some of the new subscribers have been begging for a shout out, and I'm not gonna say hello in person to every person because once you forget someone and you leave someone out, then other people get angry. So to the new subscribers at school CCR, here's your shout out. Thanks for subscribing. So let's do this. Before we go on, since this is gonna be the only review I'm gonna do for this movie, it's gonna be a spoiler video. But I'm gonna review the first part, just the movie, without spoilers. My opinion. I'm gonna give it a rating, and then I'll give you a fair warning down here when the spoilers are about to come out. Okay? So stick around. Here we go. Is this movie just as good or even better than Captain America Civil War? Well, in my opinion, no. I liked Captain America Civil War a lot more. I thought it had a lighter tone. This movie, for a long haul, feels very, very dark. They really went dark with this one. Um, it's not a bad thing. It's not that the movie is bad. It's just maybe not as fun or as uplifting as you are accustomed to now by some of the other Marvel films. But also remember, this one is not precisely produced by Marvel Studios. This is a Fox Studios production, um, but it's still from a Marvel property. So the one thing that Marvel is doing really well right now is adapting and using their properties and turning them into films, which end up being really, really fun and well done, well executed 99% of the time. And with X-Men Apocalypse, well, that's not the not the excuse, the exception. So the movie is good. The movie is a great cinematic experience. The special effects, man. All right, let's start with that. Special effects are really, really great. There's a very great sequence there that I'm not going to mention right now until the second part on the spoilers, but it's so fun and it's so well executed. So you're definitely going to have a fun time, at least with that scene, if not with the whole movie, which the whole movie I think is pretty entertaining. Um, Even though the story at some points starts to drag a little bit and you want the action to start happening, um, I can still understand why they feel they have to put these things in, but it's not really going to affect the movie to the point where, oh, I can't watch this. No, it's actually not a big distraction. It's just a little bit of a small distraction, but then overall is really good. All of the actors in it, the villain, the main villain, is actually well done, well portrayed, and it makes for a movie where the stakes are high and the heroes really have to come through, and you gotta go like, yeah, stop that dude. That dude is really, really dangerous. So X-Men Unite. Um, so in that sense, the movie is great. It's fun. All right. First level, the audiovisual experience is two thumbs up. Um, Great special effects, great soundtrack. Once again, John Ottman directing, so it brings you back to those original Bryan Singer films with the original X-Men theme. It's there, so it brings you back, and it's like, all right, this is the X-Men movies I wanted to see all along. So right there is doing a great job. The editing, the cutting of the film is really well done. So when the action is happening, you are in it, and it's well and greatly executed. You've seen some of the scenes in the trailers, and if you have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. On the other part, all right, on the second level, the narrative, the story. again, they took their time to establish the characters and to see the development of some of the most important characters. There's a lot of X-Men characters in the comic book world, so sometimes it's kind of hard to put them all in one film and shed the light on them for a long period of time. You can't. But in this one, they put the spotlight on the right characters because we're gonna have more movies, so you're gonna have a chance to see other characters develop. So the characters that had to be developed in this film were developed, and you get a sense of, oh, okay, I see where you're going. Oh, so this is what's going on. So they build up the story and the conflict and the resolution eventually in a very accurate manner, well paced for the most part. There are parts where the story starts to drag a little bit, but it's just to start connecting some of the things they show you at first in the later part of the movie. And so for the third act, you're like, okay, so I know why all these characters are here and what's going on and what needs to happen. So in that sense, it's very well. It is it predictable? Not for the most part, which is actually a surprise because many times these movies tend to be very very predictable. But at the same time, it's a superhero movie, and you know where they're going and what's going to happen. And if you're a fan of the comics and and if you have read this particular arc, well, I don't think you're going to be disappointed, although please understand they cannot take the time in one movie to explore everything that you had a chance to explore in the comic books, all right? But for the most part, I think they did a great job adapting that comic book story, that comic book arc into this particular movie, and it was well executed, and I believe you're going to have a good time with this one. Oscar Isaac as Apocalypse, and I'm gonna call him Apocalypse because that's how I knew him. They give him an Egyptian name that I was just too lazy to research, but I'm pretty sure I think I know where they're going. We'll explore that in the spoilers. But him as Apocalypse is really cool. A lot of people, when they show the first pictures of him, pre-production photos, they were like, "Oh no, he looks horrible." No, he actually looks pretty good in the final product, in the final version. So don't jump the gun, dudes and dudettes. When we see pre-production photos or production stills, they're not the final rendition of the final product. So he ended up looking really well. His portrayal, I mean, we just saw him in Star Wars, and he was Poe, and he was like, "Oh, dude, our friend," and now he's the bad guy, the ultimate bad guy, and you're like, but you buy it. He does a great job at it. Um, so no problems there with the bad guy, as opposed to Civil War, where the bad guy was like, meh. Over here is like, yeah, this is the threat. This is the dude. So yeah, well done. Um, Side characters are also very very good on this, um, because they are not just serving the purpose of being there as henchmen and minions to the bad guy, but I have a feeling they're going to develop their stories a lot more. And some of them are so comic book accurate that you're like, all right, man, and fans are going to have a great time with that. Not all of them are explored in detail, but the ones that are, you're like, all right, I see where they're going, and there's a bunch of Easter eggs in the movie as well. So no problem there. And of course, the good guys. James McAvoy as Professor X, again on point, doing really, really great. Jennifer Lawrence is probably one of the weakest characters, not because of bad acting, but because by now we want to see more Mystique than J Law, although she's really attractive and she's really cool to look at. But it's like sometimes it does get distracting that I want to see Mystique there, but I keep looking at Jennifer Lawrence on screen rather than Mystique. So that's probably one of the weakest points in the movie. But everyone else, all the characters, the new additions with Jean Grey and Cyclops, to Storm, everybody else is doing great. And of course, that awesome cameo that was kind of spoiled in the trailers. And if you saw the trailers, you know what I'm talking about. And if you saw the film, you're like, yeah, man, I wish they had saved that for the film. But still, it's really cool. All right. So as a movie, as special effects go, as editing, as narrative, as an X-Men movie, as a comic book film. This movie is really entertaining, and I'm gonna give it a definite thumb up. It's a really fun movie to go see, especially if you're an X-Men fan. You're gonna enjoy the movie a heck of a lot, I think, because I did. All right, now here we go. Spoilers! Spoiler discussion. Here we go. All right, they did a lot of great things, a lot of Easter eggs, and there's this part that I really, really wanted to talk about because I was just cracking up in the theater. And remember, I'm watching this film outside of the States where a lot of the fans are newcomers to the franchises through the movies. Not many of them are even comic book fans. But in realizing that the original X-Men film came out a long time ago, and maybe some of the newer fans that are fans of the Marvel films because of Avengers and everything else, maybe they didn't even see these movies when they came out because they were just very, very young or just or weren't even born, which just tells you how old I am. But they do this great bit where Jean Grey and Scott Summers, Cyclops, and Nightcrawler they go to the movies. Remember, this movie is taking place in the 80s. And just a little side note, just in case you hadn't noticed or if you're a newcomer, um, they're fixing the timeline from when Bryan Singer originally introduced the X-Men, X-Men 1, the original X-Men movie, and X2. Um, and then we know what happened with the other films with Brett Ratner directing the X-Men Last Stand, X-Men 3, um, to the other X-Men origin films. They're fixing the timeline. They're like basically rebooting and they're saying all those movies that you watched and hated, forget about them. They never happened. So this is the new canon. This is the new official timeline. So X-Men First Class took place in the 60s. X-Men Days of Future Past in the 70s. Now X-Men Apocalypse is taking place in the 80s. The next one is going to take place in the 90s. So they're always making reference to the decade. So in this one, they went to see Return of the Jedi in theaters because it's the 80s, and they do this great bit when they're coming out of the theater and they're saying, "All right, so I still think that the Empire was the better movie because they were not afraid of going dark." And then Scott Summers, Cyclops says, "Well, I still like the original because you can have without the original, you wouldn't have other films." Now it's like, little nod to the original X-Men, and then Jean Grey just drops the bomb. Yeah, and we all know that the third one is always the worst. Yeah, Brett Ratner, looking at you. Boom, they dropped a line on your movie. So that was hilarious. I loved it. Um, you see a little bit of Jubilee. You see how Angel got his metal wings through Apocalypse. So a lot of cool Easter eggs throughout the movie. Um, Now, usually in the spoiler video, I don't talk too much about the actual spoilers, although if it's necessary, I talk about them, like, characters who died. But I usually like to talk about other things first. Um, One of the coolest cameos was, of course, Wolverine. He had that contraption, that helmet that was in the original Weapon X comic. So they put it here because, of course, they're going to also fix all the other timelines. This is going to include Wolverine, and it's again Hugh Jackman, portraying Wolverine in a great violent action scene. And again, really cool lines. At the end, Jean Grey comes and heals him and touches him, and I think they form a connection, which explains a lot of what happens later. And then they cut to Cyclops, like, well, I guess that's the last we're gonna see of that guy. No, but so that was also a very cool scene in the movie. Um, the Stanley cameo, eh, I think there have been better ones and more fun and funny ones. This one was like, so there he is. Wasn't a big deal. He's just a bystander watching the apocalypse about to take place. Okay, so the third level, the hidden messages and the symbolisms. By now, some of you know where my faith stands, and being a comic book lover, fan of movies, it's really hard when you go see a movie with characters that you grew up loving and you see how they're using them to brainwash masses, to push agendas, And as a Christian, especially, it's really tough when they put lines that end up making you go like, so that's what you're really going after. So, like I said, the character of Oscar Isaac, Apocalypse, which I'm gonna call him Apocalypse because that's how I knew him. Uh, at some point, they're explaining his origins, and he is saying, "Well, I am known by many names," and one of them, he starts going through the names, and he says, Elohim. Um, Elohim is the one and only King of Kings, God Himself, Emmanuel, Jehovah. Okay, so they're saying this terrible character right here is the one that many people know as God and the one they praised as God, the God, Elohim. He didn't say, I am Buddha. No, he says, I am Elohim. So that right there tells you, okay, this is how you view God, you know, as a destructor. Um, in the opening monologue in the movie, they talk about how the different mutants and their different powers, how they cannot all always receive the same gifts because if one of them has the power to see into the future, he might live in fear of the future and things as such. And others believe that they were meant to rule the world. They're making reference to Apocalypse, the big baddie in this film, saying he believes that it's his right to rule this world. So no, we he's the bad guy. We are not going to let him do that. He believes he has the right to rule over this world. His name is Elohim. We will stop him. Oh man, right there they're getting deep, and I hate that. Captain America was very heavy on the Freemasonic symbolism. This one is heavily Illuminati symbolism. Pyramids everywhere, Egyptian worship everywhere. So that kind of tells you, oh man, I hate it when they just take something that used to be fun and innocent and turning them into their own freaking agendas. Uh, there's another line where he says, I was there from the beginning to see the origin or the creation of the first human, the first mutant, or something like that. Again, making reference to the Bible where they're talking about Jesus Christ and he was there with the Father at the beginning of time and he was before everything and he saw the creation of everything. So they're pretty much hammering the idea that this is Jesus, that this is God, and that he is an enslaver, that he is a bad guy. Then, the famous horsemen of the apocalypse, and they talk about it. Oh, yeah, so the four horsemen of the Bible, they got it. Is that where he got it from? And they're like, or the Bible got it from him. If the Bible is the sacred book and it is the book that means everything to us Christians, and they're saying this came from this is saying this book is a lie because it comes from this bad guy over here. So again, they're not being, ambiguous here. They're dropping hint after hint that they're saying, okay, so this is God and this is a bad guy. And toward the end in the movie, when they finally defeat him, you know, who defeats him? It's not just Professor X. Professor X is like the catalyst, but he's there and he says, "Jean Grey, I need you." And we all know the character of Jean Grey. Her alter ego is the Phoenix. And if you've done your research, and if you haven't, go and do your research. What does the Phoenix symbolize in some of these beliefs? The Phoenix symbolizes Satan, the one that's going to rise from the ashes in all glory. So, who ends up beating this character that has been established as being God, Elohim, being there at the beginning of everything? Uh, the Phoenix. Are they promoting the New World agenda, the Antichrist kingdom? Of course they are. And they do this play of going back and forth, hiding everything in plain sight, wrapping lies in a little bit of truth to get you confused. So you still root for the good guys in the movie, not knowing that you're really rooting for the real bad guys in the world. So be careful with these films, especially if you are a religious person, especially if you're a Christian who enjoys entertainment from other sources and not just living and participating of everything that is 100% only Christian in nature. Um, Even though I'm a Christian, I grew up watching a lot of movies, a lot of TV, listening to music, although it's not my biggest passion, but I do love music and secular music and, of course, entertainment in general. So for us, it's especially difficult later and later in life and nowadays to go see these pieces that at some point were part of our childhood, things that we loved watching, that were very innocent. Uh, Seeing how they are slowly turning them into our enemies, form of brainwashing the masses, and how people just love these films, and then they end up believing the dogmas, and their beliefs start being that what they see in entertainment rather than going and doing their own research, or reading the Bible. And so that's kind of dangerous, I think. So if you have little kids and you want to go and see this movie, make sure that you can explain to them a lot of the symbolisms later on. If you want to let them watch, if you want to watch these kind of films and still just try to enjoy the entertainment factor just as entertainment factor, make sure that you're aware that there's also that third subliminal level that is not so subliminal anymore, where they're trying to give you certain things. So it's up to you and the spirit to try and discern what's going on. So, X-Men Apocalypse, the first two levels, thumbs up, really fun movie. Third level, the message you're trying to push on us, it's a thumbs down. Okay, very, very negative, very satanic, very Luciferian. So be careful. Watch out for that. Other than that, I hope to see you again on the next video. And till next time, I'll see you at the movies.